Director Richard Linklater brought you the 70s with Dazed and Confused. Now he brings you the 80s.
Welcome to college.
Critics are calling Everybody Wants Some a celebration of the fun and freedom of youth.
It's about finding out who you are.
Rolling Stone raves it slaps a smile on your face that won't quit.
Yeah, baby!
It's funny as hell. And now Everybody Wants Some has an incredible score on Rotten Tomatoes.
I beg you to come to this party.
That's the pack mentality, all the adrenaline.
Does that mean you're not going?
I didn't say that.
Everybody Wants Some, rated R. Under 17, not admitted without parents. In select cities Friday.
Warning, the following show doesn't represent the opinion of the IDL, its employees, or the local clown college.
Yeah, my rhymes flow like I'm right along Sally. It's Baba Brinkman. I took a swift left at the valley. That's a dope municipality. Check it out, Baba Brinkman. Freestyles, flows straight up out of reality. Left at the valley. Peace.
I woke up this morning, had a burning deep inside. Like a near feeling, it's all a big lie. I feel the pain, there's hunger and despair. Stop the rhetoric of your teaching, time for us to share.
Welcome back to another edition of Left at the Valley. My name is Kevin, I am your host. And joining me, of course, as usual, is my great team. Hi, guys. How you doing?
Hello.
Hello.
Doing good.
Awesome. Awesome. Hey, before we get in, this is a show, of course, about positive atheism, secular thinking, and skeptical thinking, and secular humanism is what I should really say. And thank you so much for being with us. Hey, before we go into our usual, guys, I just wanted to mention a few things. First of all, I want to congratulate Ahmed. Remember our friend Ahmed? Who actually helped us with a lot of Muslim-oriented shows. He actually, he's a friend of mine, he's Egyptian, and he actually became a Canadian citizen.
Oh, excellent.
So congratulations to him.
Absolutely.
And want to send our well wishes to our friend Connie, who has been under the weather lately, and she's struggling with that. So, Connie, we're here for you, dear.
Get better soon, Connie.
Big hugs.
Did you guys notice, I was watching National Geographic the other day, did you guys notice that ever since it's been bought by Rupert Murdoch, and of course who owns Fox, that series, I guess, not a series, the show itself, not even the show, the channel, has been taking a dive. I mean, I was watching today how they were praising Ronald Reagan in the 80s, and now they have the story of God that's going to be appearing on National Geographic right away. Now everything that was like scientific just went out the window, and now it's like the History Channel all over again.
Oh, it was a sad day. I don't know whether you remember. Well, it was only last year, I think, that Rupert Murdoch bought it, and one of the first executive decisions was to lay off. 120 of the photographers and journalists that had, maintained the continuum of excellence since the 1800s.
Yeah, it's pretty terrible. I mean, to see such a
death to just. I wonder if the National Geographics are going to become the older editions are now going to become priceless because they are they're an extinct breed.
Yeah. Who knows? Dear, I'll ask you to flip your microphone up a bit.
Okay.
I didn't notice because I pretty much boycotted National Geographic right after I found out that Robert Murdoch bought it because he canceled Firefly.
Can't blame you. And there's another thing I want to announce. Did you guys know that right now, this is our second anniversary at Left of the Valley?
Oh, happy anniversary to us.
Really? 2 years?
2 years. Well, we're starting our third year, and now on CIVL. For those of you that might have just joined us on CIVL, we've got 2 years worth of podcast on Blog Talk Radio. And please don't listen to the very first shows because they're pretty rough. We're not experts. You might want to start with more recent material. But the March 17th was when I opened the Blog Talk Radio Left of the Valley, and our first show was actually on the 24th.
Wow, so, time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, cool. Exactly. Yeah. So now, our third year, and it's going to be a good one.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Anything else you guys want to talk about before we go into our usual?
I saw. I wasn't sure. I watched Transcendent the other night.
Okay.
With Johnny Depp.
Yep.
And did you say why? Well, first of all, because Johnny Depp was in it. Well, that's a good reason why. And you know what? I had some kind of mixed emotions about it. Not because of Johnny Depp, just the story. But It's an interesting one. I would really like to hear either co-host feedback or listener feedback as to what people's thinkings were about Transcendent. Because, I went into it with the kind of the mindset of, it's a science fiction movie, but I was, thinking maybe the science, kind of like, what was that movie that had, that was all the rave about the science? The guy that goes into quantums.
Oh, you mean that old show, Quantum Leap?
No, it was a movie
That's
recently.
an old show.
I can't remember. Anyway, I would like to get people's input because I liked it, but I didn't like it, but I kind of liked it. So yeah, it was interesting. I would recommend it. It's a good movie. So maybe we should have a movie segment.
No, it didn't make a whole lot of the box office. It sure did make you think about the whole thing of being able to upload your personality and your synapses to a computer and download into something else eventually later. So certainly give us food for thought.
Yeah.
Okay, Nancy, you ready to go?
I'm ready. Okay, and here we go. This day in history, which is a roundup of those events and people who altered and illuminated the days between March 14th and March 20th. And I'm going to break protocol here for a little bit because I usually go from the last date to the current date. But today's a special day. It happens to be the International Day of Happiness.
Woo!
Woo! So I thought we could start on a nice light note and ask everybody what makes you happy. So who wants to jump in and be the first happy person?
Well, I'll say, frankly, doing this show with you guys makes me happy. And I know it's sappy, but this is a way for us to actually go out there and give out our opinions. And the great thing about radio today, and especially cyberspace, is who knows, 100 years down in the future, people can actually look us up and say, what did people think about these events at this time? If you have a conversation with your grandfather or your great-grandfather or grandmother, for that matter, you don't really know. You know them a bit, but you don't really know their inner, deeper thoughts. And I think this medium is actually great for that, and it brings me great joy to be here and share that with everybody.
Oh, good
I'm happy.
beginning. Yeah, good beginning.
You know what? It's a tough question because I have lots of things that make me happy, so I could probably list them all off. But, yeah, I don't know. I think probably one thing, sitting down with a really good book and just losing myself in a book and having some quiet time, that makes me happy. But that's just one of many, so...
Well, the best thing is that you've got so many choices.
I'm happy with life.
There you go.
I would say it's in the same vein as Alistair. A lot of things do make me happy, but I have one special example from yesterday when I just stepped outside and saw some of my flowers finally come to bloom, and there was a big fat bumblebee queen. And I just kept watching her, and she was like a hummingbird on cocaine. Just insane.
Bumblebees on cocaine make you happy?
Just trying to keep track of her.
The comments of Martina are not necessarily those of CIVL. Just want to make sure everybody knows that.
Just saying. So just watching that little bugger flying around just make me insanely happy. I don't know why. I'm weird.
Yeah.
They got colony collapse wrong. It's not because of pesticides. It's because they're all on crack.
How about yourself, sir?
Like you said, intelligent conversation. Doing the show. This is only my second time here, and so far it's great. I am hopelessly addicted to Facebook debate groups, unfortunately. To go to some kind of Facebook Anonymous, but I had a thought the other day. My 2-year-old daughter had fallen asleep on my chest on the couch for like 2 hours, and I was like, this is the greatest thing in the world. Yeah. And remembering before I had kids, when I'd be out having parties and that sort of thing, just still doesn't compare to the kids. Absolutely not.
Yeah. Awesome.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me see. I think I can boil it down to goodness, good friends, good times, my good dogs, my good kids. I shouldn't have put the dogs before my kids, but they're adults and they've moved off, and the dogs still live with me, so they're
dogs are easier to train too.
Dogs are easier. They don't need a college education or the car keys, so that's always good too. Yeah, so that's fun. I'm glad everybody had so many different choices. So now that we're all happy, we'll go back and start with March 14th, which was World Maths Day and Pi Day. And it was also Happy Birthday Albert Einstein in 1879. And World Math Day was actually timed for Albert Einstein's birthday. So we celebrate the wonderment of pi, and math nerds likely had a wonderful time because this year's Pi Day was a once-in-a-century occurrence. And March 14th, or 314, celebrates the mathematical constant of pi, because pi represents the ratio of circumference of a circle divided by its diameter. And while it's often abbreviated as 3.14, there's actually an infinite number of digits beyond the decimal point. And I understand, because I heard it from a TV fiction show, so it has to be true, that, that pi actually represents every number in everybody's life, that it goes long enough so that every phone number, every address, every numerical fact will be somewhere in that string of pi. Sounded good.
Pi unites us all.
Pi unites. Apple would be my favorite flavor. Anyway, so because of Albert Einstein's 137th birthday and Pi Day, it certainly made March 14th special. March 15th was Teacher's Day in Brazil. And also in 1940, the debut of a movie called The Great Dictator, which was a satirical social commentary written, produced, and starring Charlie Chaplin. Has anybody ever seen The Great Dictator?
Oh, yes.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Good. Oh, everybody did. So you know the speech.
The
Anybody
speech. It's famous.
who's listening to us who has not heard that speech, you can Google it, you can isolate that speech from the rest of the movie. But it is really an inspiring, it sends chills down my spine every time I listen to it. March 16th is Book Smugglers' Day in Lithuania, because at one time the Catholic Church would only allow Latin as the language that books could be published, so they had to smuggle in Lithuanian books. And in 1881, on March 16th, Barnum and Bailey Circus debuts, and down in Sarasota, Florida, where they spend the winters, or the summers rather, all of the streets are named for the circle. March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, so we all turned Irish for the day, which was a wonderful thing. March 18th, Maurice Richard became the first National Hockey League
Maurice
player.
the Rocket Richard.
The Rocket Richard, 50 goals. And in honor of today's show on atheism, in 2013, a book by Dale McGowan called Atheism for Dummies was published in paperback. 384 pages, which is a friendly guide to understanding atheist thought, history, and literature.
Now you found where my research came from.
There we go. So, ending with today, it is the vernal equinox, the first day of spring.
Woohoo!
Woohoo! And that, dear listeners, brings to a close another passing parade of interesting, mundane, unusual, and occasionally bizarre events and people that make up this day in history.
Thank you so much, Nancy. Thank you very much for this always informative segment. Now, a lot of people don't realize that there's a lot of great figures in history out there, and one of the things we like to do on the show is actually put a bit of a spotlight on. So today we'll do a spotlight on Tommy Douglas. My dear Tyler, you have a bit of a report for us.
Yeah, so I guess I will talk about Tommy Douglas. I'm assuming most people know who he is, but for those who don't, he's been called the greatest Canadian. He was well known for pioneering Canada's universal health care, and pretty much that's what most people know about him. But I find that if you go back and you look at his childhood, I guess hindsight is 20/20. It looks like a perfect recipe for how he ended up what he ended up being. He was born in Scotland in 1904, and he moved to Winnipeg in 1910, but right before he moved here, he fell and he hurt his leg. And he ended up getting something called osteomyelitis. I hope I said that correctly.
Sounds painful.
Yeah, so basically he came here and his family could not afford to fix his leg, so they were going to have to amputate it. Luckily, a well-known surgeon at the time offered to do the surgeries for free if they would allow medical students to observe the surgeries. So they did it, and it rescued his leg. And that was kind of the whole beginning of, should you have to lose a limb or be denied health care simply because you can't afford to pay for it. So this really goes back to him being 6 years old, right? So, and then he ended up going back to Scotland during World War I, and then he moved back to Winnipeg late 1918. And then I'm not sure if you're familiar with it or not, but Winnipeg had a general strike in June 1919, and he was on top of a roof observing this, and the police pretty much just gunned down the strikers.
Ouch.
Beat them all with clubs and that sort of thing. So that kind of shows where he got his interest in unions and protecting workers and that sort of thing. I'm actually originally from Saskatchewan, so this was a pretty important story to me, especially since my grandfather, Louis Scoop was his nickname. Scoop Lurie was the mayor of Moose Jaw several times. He was also CCF, just like Tommy Douglas. But in 1931, when Tommy Douglas was a Baptist minister in Weyburn, Saskatchewan, they had kind of a similar thing that happened in Winnipeg. They had coal miners that set up their own union, and they were striking in Estevan there, and again, the police beat them down and shot and killed 3 of them, I think. 3 dead for sure anyways, and he was friends with them because Estevan is pretty close to Weyburn, so that also shows all the things kind of coming together to create who he was. I guess he wasn't really allowed to be getting involved in politics, but when you have all these things going on around you, he started talking about it at church, and they didn't really like that. So
he was a man of the people, for sure.
Absolutely. So he quit being a Baptist minister, got involved with the CCF. He was elected to the House of Commons in 1935, and then he became the leader of the CCF in 1942, and then won the provincial election in 1944. And then,
forgive me for a second there. When you say CCF, what exactly does that mean?
It's the first democratic socialist party in all of North America, the very first government. It was the Cooperative Commonwealth Federation.
Oh, okay.
Socialists and whatnot. So there was definitely a lot of, calling everybody Bolsheviks and evil communists and and that sort of thing. But then they won the next 5 elections, provincial elections up till 1961, where Tommy Douglas basically started the NDP, the New Democratic Party. It's a silly name if you ask me. But so we got the whole health care thing all put forward together, and I believe it was July 1st, obviously Canada Day, 1962, that the doctors went on strike for 3 weeks because, they were told that universal health care, they wouldn't make as much money, or people wouldn't be able to choose their doctors. There was some funny rumors that they would put video cameras in all the doctors' offices, so we'd be naked on camera and all these very strange things. But after 3 weeks, the doctors conceded, and within the next 3 years, the vast majority of doctors were perfectly okay with the universal health care. They realized that their fears were completely irrational.
Hint for our American friends.
Yeah. And within 10 years, the rest of Canada kind of followed suit, and that was the birth of our universal health care. So if you look back to his childhood, he just kind of saw things that were really unfair, and that people should be able to have, full equal access to it. And he went on from there with forming unions, crown corporations. He actually created Sask Power, which is the publicly owned Saskatchewan Power Company, created SGI, which is the Saskatchewan Government Insurance, and many, many other things.
Okay. You want me to play a clip?
Yes.
All right. Here's a clip of Tommy Douglas giving a speech. It's actually an actor, but it's a recreation of his speech called Mouseland.
I would like to tell you a story. It's the story of a place called Mouseland. And this is where all the little mice lived and played, were born and died, and where they lived much the same as you and I do. They even had a parliament. And every 4 years they held an election, used to walk down to the polls and cast their ballots. Some of them even got a ride to the polls. Then they got a ride for the next 4 years afterwards, too. Just like you and me. And every time on used to elect a government. A government made up of big, fat, black cats. Now, if you think it's strange that mice should elect a government made up of cats, you just look at the history of Canada. And maybe you'll see they weren't any stupider than we are. Now, I'm not saying anything against the cats. They were nice fellows. They conducted their government with dignity. They passed good laws. That is, laws that were good for cats. But the laws that are good for cats aren't very good for mice. One of the laws said that mouse holes had to be big enough so that a cat could get his paw in. Another law said that mice could only travel at certain speeds so that a cat could get his breakfast without too much effort. All of the laws were good laws for cats. But oh, they were hard on the mice. And life was getting harder and harder. And when the mice couldn't take it anymore, they decided something had to be done about it. So they went en masse to the polls and they voted the black cats out. They put in the white cats. And still, nothing changed. You see, my friends, the trouble was not the color of the cats. The trouble was that they were cats. So naturally, they looked after cats instead of mice. And then one day, there came along one little mouse who had an idea. My friends, watch out for that little fellow with an idea. And he said to all the little mice, he said, listen, fellas, why do we keep on electing a government made up of cats? Why don't we elect a government made up of mice? Oh, they said, he's a Bolshevik, lock him up. And so they threw him in jail. But I want to remind you, you can lock up a mouse and you can lock up a man. But you can't lock up an idea. And one of these days, that little mouse is going to get himself elected. Myself, I say it's high time.
Tired of being misunderstood or misrepresented? As a public service, the crew from Left at the Valley proudly presents Know Your Fallacies with Mark Cunningham.
Good evening. I've taken time out of my busy schedule to briefly explain to you, the free thinker, the finer points of logical fallacies. With some practice, attention to detail, and of course my guidance, you will too easily disarm any artless, full-born ratsbane who dares cross linguistic blades with you. Today, let's look at another attack a vain lewdster would use. The anecdotal evidence. Widely used by those seeking validity, the anecdote is amongst the most common fallacy used to try to convince you of a claim, and, unfortunately, also a difficult one to dismiss for believers because of the sincerity of the claimant.
My grandfather smoked 2 packs a day and lived to be 97 years old. Therefore, you shouldn't believe all those studies that smoking is harmful.
In this situation, the claimant is sincere in her beliefs. However, scientific measures are almost always more accurate than personal perceptions and experiences. Her grandfather was statistically lucky to evade cancer, or maybe had a generic predisposition that helped him, but this lucky draw doesn't erase the correlation between smoking and cancer. Remind your opponent that our senses are all too easily fooled. Otherwise, magicians would be out of work. Stick to the cold hard facts because you cannot account for the numerous variables affecting your judgment every day. Now, go forth, my friend, and remember, knowledge is power, and the one who knows wins. Until next time.
You're listening to Left at the Valley on CIVL 101.7 FM.
Anti-Semitism was preached as an official doctrine of the church until 1964. Do you think that might have something to do with public opinion in Austria and Bavaria and Poland and Lithuania? That the Jewish people were accused accused collectively as a people of deicide, of the crime of the murder of God in the figure of Jesus of Nazareth. And that anathema on them was not lifted until 1964, well after the perpetrators of the Holocaust had stood trial in secular courts and been rightly punished for their actions. How can this church say it has any moral superiority? It has difficulty catching up to what ordinary people regard as common moral and ethical sense, and it still can't make itself apologize properly.
And we're back. Tyler, that was a great little spot there, spotlight on Tommy Douglas. Good job, sir.
Nice.
All right, moving on. We've got a little segment I kind of want to try, but before we get into it, let's see how our usual segment of let's see how that one goes. Maybe we'll have fun with another segment after that. I got an interesting story here. You guys know the Ezra Levant? Does that ring a bell to you guys? No? Oh, jeez. This might go. All right. So it's called Political Correctness Strikes Again. This is a veteran journalist who was fired from The Rebel, which is a right-wing website owned and operated by conservative commentator Ezra Levant. He would like you to believe that he's a champion of free speech and journalistic integrity, by the way, because the journalist apparently did not display the correct political identity. Remember the short-lived Sun News that was supposed to be Fox News North?
Yep.
He was one of the headers of that, Ezra Levant, right? He's I made a rant in one of our podcasts where I was basically pleading the local news station here, especially CKNW, to stop bringing this guy in. I mean, this guy was just,
I remember that now.
Yeah. So I think you're off-brand with The Rebel, Levant told veteran journalist Michael Coran in his termination email, which was dated in March 2015. Your larger political identity is, quote, confusing our audience, adding that an important part of The Rebel, in both commentary and activism, is to be a champion for social conservative and Christians. At least, that's what they ought to welcome in the public square. In my judgment, he concluded, we need to take a break from your brand. So, in other words, they fired the guy because he wasn't Christian enough, I guess. Or conservative enough. Levant suggested Coran's column offended the Rebel's core audience, telling Coran, your column about the motivation and nature of critics of the Ontario sex ed curriculum may hurt many of our supporters. You might not remember that story, but there was a bit of the Christian right in Ontario really opposed the sex ed curriculum in Ontario.
Yep.
And this gentleman wrote an article about it, and he got fired for being not critical enough, I guess. He even alleged Coran's attack them ad hominem, although Coran says there was no ad hominem attack. The column does debunk some of the more outlandish arguments against the sex ed curriculum. At one point, suggests some critics have not even read the document, and they are opposed to pretty much sex education outside of the family. So he pretty much points out the new teaching exposes children to homosexuality, and that the fact that Ontario Premier Kathleen Wynne is gay. And as much as it might be denied, I can assure you that some of the leading and loudest opponents of the curriculum have never been comfortable with her being a lesbian. But that's not an ad hominem, that's actually quite true. So, you guys have any thoughts on that story?
Well, the studies that I have seen shows that, well, mainly in the States was the stuff that I was reading, was that the states or the schools that have the least amount of sex education tend to have the highest rates of STDs and teenage pregnancy. So obviously it's not working.
Yes, I totally agree with that. It seems to me that they don't seem to realize, I don't want to point a finger at any particular group, but a lot of people don't seem to realize that emotion versus facts, versus stats, the facts are always going to win, like it or not. You might not like this curriculum because it might offend your sensibilities as a Christian or not, but you know what? The numbers speak for themselves.
And they have actually shown that studies have shown that the idea of abstinence over, protection works. Is they've shown that abstinence doesn't work. At the end of the day, it's if you want to remain abstinent, go for it. That's great. However, if you are going to practice anything sexual, they need to be aware of what's happening. And this is a lot of the problems, that they don't want people to be educated because they think that then they will go out and do it.
Mm-hmm.
It needs to be balanced.
Yeah, after purging Corin from the Rebel, Levant would actually continue floating conspiracy theories. He's really strong with that, suggesting that the curriculum had been designed by a pedophile aiming to groom children for incest. And I hate to say it, but we came this close to having this kind of media all the time here in this country. And thank goodness we didn't. And this is why I was pleading places like CKNW, stop using this guy. I don't care. I know, like, being a bit of a rebel and being, brings in the ratings and all that, but it's not good for the people. It just isn't good if you bring this kind of radio or this kind of media.
Sounds like a Canadian Alex Jones.
Yeah, totally. That's very well said. That's very well said.
No.
I'm sure he's gonna. Well, he's probably never gonna listen to this report, but he wouldn't be happy to hear us talk about it for sure. But it just shows that when you have the microphone in front of your face, you do have a bit of a responsibility to be as factual as possible. I can understand that sometimes your facts might be wrong because new science can come in and change your position, but pushing out conspiracy theories, especially for something as important as sexual education for the youth, I think does a huge disservice.
Yeah.
Any final word?
No, I think you've stated it beautifully well. It's nice to be able to just sit here and breathe in and out and listen to the rational argument. I don't even have to jump in. I can just sit and enjoy it.
All right, let's let our hair down for a sec.
Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned.
It's time for a confession. I thought I'd bring in just something, a little story that comes in, and you guys tell me if I'm out of my gourd or not, if I'm stupid or crazy. You go right ahead. You can rip on Kevin today. Here's a story. I have a bottle of, Axe body wash. I have one of those at home. What I don't tell people, and I'm here to confess this, I'm confessing my sin here. I actually got that bottle. I was actually at the gym, and somebody left it there. It was a full bottle, and they just left it there. They left. I have no idea who they was, and I just took it home. Does that make me cheap?
No, I think it makes you practical because it would have been thrown away, and
What
here
is
you are,
secular
just smelling
Critical thinking.
spendiferous because now you have the axe. It's an improvement. I'm on your side 100%.
Did you like the smell?
Well, actually, I just finished it yesterday. It was great, and I kind of feel bad. It's like really, it's like a $3 bottle somewhere at Superstore, and here I am, in order to save a bit of money, I guess. And he said, "Oh, sure, it's like pretty much full. Why not take it home, right?" So, was I wrong in doing that? Should I have brought the bottle to the front counter and say somebody might come back to grab this?
Just go buy a bottle, stick it back in the gym, and no one will know. Say 3 Hail Marys and buy us all coffee. We won't tell anybody.
No, three Hail Christopher Hitchens. Remember the show you're on.
Yeah, we pretty Hitchens here. All right, so that was my confession of the day, and thank you so much for listening, and we'll be right back right after this.
What is secular humanism?
Critical thinking. Knowledge is freedom. Freedom from ignorance and its offspring, fear.
The BC Humanist Association has been active in the Vancouver area for over 25 years. We offer a friendly and welcoming place to make new friends, as well as free educational lectures. We invite you to join us any Sunday at 10 a.m. in the Oak Ridge Senior Center. Please visit our website for more details, bchumanist.ca.
You are listening to Left at the Valley on CIBL 101.7 FM.
Open up your eyes, can't you see the world is falling? Here we go with this bullshit again. Listen with your ears, can't you hear the Lord is calling? Motherfucker, that's just a win.
And we're back. Tyler, you wanted to say something?
Oh, yeah, see, that just goes to show. You become an atheist, and next thing you know, you're at the gym robbing people.
No moral standards.
Well, you know what? Maybe I recouped a bit because I actually dropped my wallet at that gym, and somebody found it, and of course, all the $120 that was in there was gone, too. So I recuperated $3 worth of it.
Karma.
Karma, that's right. All right, so the show today is about old versus new atheism, and our dear friend, the Reformed, has got a whole report for us. So My friend, the mic is yours.
Alrighty. And, it's kind of unfair to say that it's, when I started the idea for this segment, I put down, old versus new atheism. But I think it's kind of unfair to say it's a versus. I think this is more of I want to take people through the evolution of atheism as briefly as possible. Just let me get my atheist.
You mean atheism wasn't created? It evolved?
I think it evolved. But there's a lot of confusion because people now are hearing about new atheism and new atheists. And so I thought, well, let's just kind of discuss our way through it and see, I'll open things up for discussion. If people want to throw their 2 cents worth in, that's fine. But I thought, let's start at the beginning and let's get to the 21st century.
In the beginning.
In the beginning, there was no Christopher Hitchens. Okay, so atheism is usually defined incorrectly as a belief of systems or a system of belief. Atheism is not a disbelief in gods or a denial of gods. It is a lack of belief in gods. Atheism, broadly speaking, is the rejection of belief in the existence of a deity or deities. In a narrower sense, atheism is specifically the position that there are no deities. However, some would say, and this part is actually a reflection on some input I had from other members of the crew, some would say perhaps more accurately that they are atheists but wouldn't claim with certainty that there is no God. As one of our crew members wrote to me and said, "Find me a God I can believe exists and I'll change my mind. Until then, I am without knowledge a God exists, and the default position is to withhold belief."
Very well said.
It's not about being without belief, it's about withholding belief. So, inclusively, atheism is the absence of belief in any deity. Atheism contrasts with theism, which is, in this most general form, the belief in at least one deity or one deity exists. So, putting it out to the crew here in the room, what's your definition of atheism personally? How do you see it?
Okay, I'll go first, I guess. I've always maintained that atheism is simply one answer to one question. And that's all there is. That's all that makes us, that binds us, the common thing that we have between us here. You're claiming that there is a God, or you have a relationship, or whatever, and I'm skeptical of that claim. That is atheism right there. I don't see any evidence for me to actually be convinced that you're right. That is it. That's all there is to it.
Nancy?
I'm pretty much the same way, that in the absence of evidence, I don't think there are any supernatural or gods in the sky or anything other than what we have on this planet. It's kind of like if you don't believe in Santa Claus, are you a Santa Claus atheist? So
Santa Clausist.
Yeah, Santa Clausist.
But it doesn't define anyone. It's only one part of your belief or non-belief system.
Mm-hmm. Oh, incorrectly a belief system.
Yeah,
remember?
Correct. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It gets to be semantics, and you find yourself saying things that are not quite accurate.
Yeah. Tyler, Martina, anything to add?
Yeah, I would agree with Kevin. It's just simply, it's not a claim. It is a response to a claim that God exists. I don't claim that God does not exist. I do have a very good friend of mine who identifies himself as a Gnostic atheist. He claims to be 100% sure. I am an agnostic atheist. I might be 99% sure no God exists, but I only deal with provisional conclusions, no absolutes, because I will absolutely change my mind once evidence is provided. So if you ask me if I believe in God, I say no. He'll say no as well. We're atheists together. That's it. That's the only thing that we really have in common in that sense. I'm an agnostic atheist, like there are agnostic theists. I know people who say, I believe God exists, but I'm not 100% sure, and I'd be willing to change my mind. So they're also agnostic.
Before Martina jumps in, I just want to quickly interrupt you, dear. And just to add to what Tyler says, I think a lot of people confuse the idea that you're being agnostic about a God, but you're almost certain about the Abrahamic God, right? That's the same way, right? If you tell me, is there a God? Well, it's quite possible. Is the Abrahamic God? I'm almost certain that he's not.
Yeah, it has to make basically testable predictions, which Yahweh would, but a pantheist God, which Richard Dawkins calls just sexed up atheism, doesn't really make...
Sexed up atheism?
Yeah, it doesn't really make predictions that can be tested. Same with the deist God. But yes, different degrees, depends on the God.
All right. Martina?
I hate to be that person, but what he said.
Okay, well, the term atheism originated from the Greek atheos, meaning without God or without gods, and it was it's used as a pejorative term applied to those thoughts that reject, or those who thought and reject God worship by larger society. With the spread of free thought, skeptical inquiry, and subsequent increase in criticism of religion, application of the term narrowed in scope. The first individuals to actually identify themselves with the word atheist actually lived in the 18th century during the Age of Enlightenment. The French Revolution, noted for its unprecedented atheism, witnessed the first major political movement in history to advocate the supremacy of human reason. However, atheism actually goes back further than the 6th century, but the 6th century is kind of where we get our first glimpses. Among the 6 orthodox schools of Hindu philosophy, and I will just say now, please forgive my pronunciation of names that are not English, because I have difficulty with the English language, so anything that is not a part of the English language, I'm going to fall on my butt. So anyway, among the 6 orthodox schools of Hindu philosophy, Samkhya, again, pronunciation, is the oldest philosophical school of thought and does not accept God. And the early Mimamsa also rejects the notion of God. Other Indian philosophies generally regarded as atheistics include the classical Samkhya and the Purva Minimas. The rejection of a personal creator god is also seen in Jainism and Buddhism in India.
Minimas, you say?
Yeah, I'm butchering it.
You keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
Pretty accurate. So that's atheism in the Eastern philosophies. Now, if you move to Western atheism, it has its roots in the pre-Socratic Greek philosophy. The 5th century BCE Greek philosopher Diagoras is known as the first atheist. Autonomists such as Democritus attempted to explain the world in a purely materialistic way without reference to the spiritual or the mystical. Critias viewed religion as a human invention. I love this. He viewed it as a human invention used to frighten people into following moral order, and Prodactus also appears to have made clear atheist statements in his work. I just love that. I mean, we haven't gone very far. That's going back to the early 5th, 6th century BCE, and here we are today. We still scare children with this idea of, if you don't believe, you're going to go and burn in hell forever. I mean, nothing has really changed. Throughout history, many of the great philosophers were in fact atheists or atheistic in their philosophy. And this is actually a really interesting fact that I came across. Early Christians were labeled as atheists.
Yes. They believe in the Roman gods, right?
Yeah, by the non-Christians because of their disbelief in pagan gods. During the Roman Empire, Christians were actually executed for their rejection of the Roman gods in general, and they were executed because of their failure to worship the emperor. However, when Christianity became the state religion of Rome in 381 CE, heresy became a punishable offense, so they just flipped it over. Interesting. The Middle Ages, the Islamic world underwent a golden age, with the associated advances in science and philosophy. Arab and Persian lands produced outspoken rationalists and atheists, whose names I will not pronounce because I will butcher them. However, they wrote and taught that religion itself was a fable invented by the ancients, and that humans were of 2 sorts, those with brains but no religion, and those with religion but no brains.
Ooh, jeez.
That's a T-shirt one for you right there.
Yeah, where's my sound effect?
Okay, so moving into the 17th and 19th century, does anybody have anything to add to what I've just said?
Yeah, actually, a quote from Stephen Roberts. Once you understand why you reject all other gods, you'll understand why I reject yours.
Yes, and I would add something from Christopher Hitchens that would say, we can't really be mad at religion because it was our first attempt at trying to explain the world around us. But now we just have better explanations, so it can just go by the wayside.
Yeah. Again, those with brains but no religion, and those with religions and no brains. So the 17th and 19th century, historian Geoffrey Blainey wrote that the Reformation paved the way for atheists by attacking the authority of the Catholic Church, which, in turn, quietly inspired other thinkers to attack the authority of the new Protestant churches. Hence, my reference to myself as the Reformed, and my reports as the Reformation reports, because it comes back to that. Criticism of Christianity became increasingly frequent in the 17th and 18th centuries, especially in England and France. The first known explicit atheist was a German critic of religion, Matthias Knunz. Is that correct, Martina? Knunzing, okay. In his 3 writings in 1674, he was followed by 2 other explicit atheists, a Polish ex-Jesuit philosopher and a French priest, Jean Messler. In the course of the 18th century, another openly atheistic thinkers followed, such as Baron de Holbach, Jacques-André Nagon, and other French materialists. I should have asked Kevin for the proper pronunciations of those names.
No, you can't.
I'm sorry, I do not speak English, okay?
I do, but I just butcher it. The philosopher David Hume developed a skeptical epistemology grounded in atheism, and Immanuel Kant's philosophy has strongly questioned the very possibility of metaphysical knowledge. Both of those philosophers undermined the metaphysical basis of natural theology and criticized the classical arguments for the existence of God. Any comments before we move into the 20th century?
Yeah, there was a famous story. I will find the link so we can put it up on the internet because I feel the need to support every claim. There was a very famous story about they were having church Sunday morning in this big fancy church, and an earthquake struck and killed a whole bunch of people. And they kind of figured, yeah, wow. And that, I guess, sponsored or triggered a lot of people's different thoughts about whether or not God intervenes or not, and this was all around kind of the same time frame that you're talking about, which is, like the birth of deism, that sort of thing.
All right.
Yeah, it's like that. They say the debate was over, and once they decide to put, lightning rods on top of churches.
Yeah.
The debate was over then.
So I'm going to move quickly through the 20th century because I know our time is short. So atheism in the 20th century, particularly in the form of practical atheism, advanced in many societies. Atheistic thought found recognition in a wide variety of other broader philosophies such as existentialism, objectivism, secular humanism, nihilism, anarchy, logical positivism, Marxism, feminism, and general scientific and rationalist movement. In addition, state atheism emerged in Eastern Europe and Asia during this time under the Soviet leaders Lenin and Stalin and the communist Chinese leader Mao. Atheist and anti-religious policies in the Soviet Union included numerous legislative acts outlawing religious instruction in the schools and the emergence of the League of Militant Atheists. And then, we can kind of look back and look at the Lithuanian story that Nancy brought up, where people were smuggling books in because the Catholic Church said nothing except for Latin. So it's almost like a flip on its head,
Yeah, but a lot of people use that to say, oh well, atheists are bad. Look at Stalin. Look at Mao. Stalin was not doing this thing in the name of atheism. He was stopping the teaching of or people from going to church because he knew he was a rallying point. Mm-hmm. The man was just hungry for power. Right?
He's a dictator.
Exactly.
He was killing everybody, atheists included.
Exactly. It's not like he went to people to say, okay, you pray to God, well, you die in the name of science, Yeah. Be cursed by Dawkins or something like that, right?
And there's a lot of misunderstanding about Marxism and communism and Stalin, Lenin, and I think that's maybe something we can touch on in the future in a different show, because it's a whole subject unto itself.
Are you telling me to shut up?
No, not at all. But you're telling me to hurry up. So let's look at some landmark things in the 20th century. 1948, the Supreme Court case brought by Vashti McCollum that struck down religious education in public schools. The famous Madeleine Murray O'Hair was perhaps the most influential American atheist. She brought forth the 1963 Supreme Court case Murray versus Curlett, which banned compulsory prayer in public school. Mm-hmm. 1966, Time magazine asked the question, "Is God dead?" in response to the Death of God theology movement. And the Freedom from Religion Foundation, which was co-founded by Annie Nicole Gaylor and her daughter Annie Laurie Gaylor, and I believe her mom just passed away last year. That was founded in 1967 in the United States and promotes the separation of state and church, and they do a fantastic job down there. In 2012, the first Women in Secularism conference was held in Arlington, Virginia, where secular women got together to promote atheist feminist movement, which has become extremely popular based on fighting the sexism and sexual harassment within the atheist community movement itself. And that brings us into the 21st century. How much time have I got?
Oh, you got a good 5 minutes.
Okay. So within the 21st century, this is where the birth of New Atheism really kind of took off. And it advocated the view that religion should not simply be tolerated, but should be countered, criticized, and exposed by rational argument wherever the influence arises. The foundation stones of this movement are Sam Harris, Daniel Dennett, Richard Dawkins, Victor Steiner, and Christopher Hitchens. And those four, Sam Harris, Daniel Dennett, Richard Dawkins, and Christopher Hitchens, were known as the four horsemen of the non-apocalypse. And there's a brilliant YouTube video out there where they sit and talk and discuss this. It's fantastic.
It's a long video, but it's totally worth watching.
It completely is. There's a lot of propositions out there. New atheists generally seek to disassociate themselves from the mass political atheism that gained popularity in the early 20th century. New atheists are more associated with the argument from divine hiddenness and the idea that absence of evidence is evidence of absence, when evidence can be expected. New atheists assert that many religious and supernatural claims are scientific claims in nature, which should then be open to scientific testing and not just accepted blindly. New atheism is politically engaged in a variety of ways, including campaigns to reduce the influence of religion in the public sphere, attempts to promote cultural change, promote the idea of an atheistic identity or an atheist identity. However, there are divisions within the movement. Like I said, there's a division among gender and racial balance. Now, there are some pretty heavy criticisms against the idea of new atheism. It's been called evangelical atheism or evangelical anti-theism, and has been described as the conviction that religion is the leading source of problems around the world, an obstacle to creating human perfection and a Western civilization utopia. New atheists are often described as secular fundamentalists, displaying cultish commitment to science and a childishly simplistic view of religion. They've been labeled as severely bigoted towards Islam and slavish and of slavist faith, which they feel is just like blind faith. They're just following along. So new atheists have also been accused of peddling fear, suspicion, and hate. There's that term Islamophobia that's been brought out.
Which is such a ridiculous term.
Yeah. There's the prominence that, it's mostly white, male, middle-class professors, highly educated, that is, totalitarian, and that, new atheism in itself is extremely dogmatic and tribal in its own self-identity. So, there's a lot of criticisms of new atheism, but that's kind of an abridged version of how we got to where we are today, from the old classical atheism to the new, I would say maybe more militant atheism of Dennett, Hitchens, and Dawkins.
I think there's this wonderful little cartoon that goes on social media where you have in the first square, you have somebody holding the Bible and say, "Shut up," and the other one's not talking. And in the second square, the same picture, and the first one goes, "Shut up," and the other one goes, "No." And that to me is the difference between old and new atheism. Yeah. I hate to say it, but maybe if atheists in the past had been a bit more vocal, we wouldn't be in the kind of having the kind of issues we have now today.
And that's again one of the criticisms by the theists about the new atheists is that they see them as being having a high level of confidence in their own views and being unapologetic. And to me, that's part of it too. Like, why should they be apologetic?
Yeah, totally.
No one else is apologizing for their views, so why should atheists be apologetic, and why shouldn't they be forthright in saying, know what, we have a different point of view, and if we're going to listen to yours, you're going to listen to ours. It's only balanced and fair.
Well, like I said in the very first rant I did here at CIVL, which was the very first rant I did on for the podcast, was people deserve respect. Opinions don't. You can have an opinion, but this automatic line that we have, the saying, you need to respect all opinions. I'm sorry, that needs to go out the window. There are some opinions out there that are just ludicrous, and especially with the amount of information we have today. If somebody was in here today and saying, that all people that are left-handed should be crucified, that's a ridiculous opinion, and it's based on nothing. But because it's an opinion, deserve automatic respect? I don't think so. No, if you have an opinion, that's great, but I am going to challenge your opinion, and that's what we do here at the show.
So I think just like racism, right? So, people are entitled to their own opinions, but they are not entitled to their own facts.
Exactly.
And I think if people want to get a really good handle on what New Atheism is and what classical atheism is, there's lots of stuff out there on the internet. However, be very careful of what you read on the internet because it's not all true.
No, of course not.
But you know what? There's some great books out there too. And if you check out our website at leftatthevalley.com, on the left-hand side of the webpage, we actually do a list of books, and you can find some pretty good resources in there, as well as under our resource section. There's some good web links to reliable sources.
Well, I'll also put up a series of links that explains how to evaluate internet content, and how to identify what is reliable, what's not, and why that is the case.
Yeah, always check your source, right?
Yeah.
And I'd like to put a call out to anyone in our audience that has any questions about atheism or a viewpoint about atheism. Go ahead and send us an email, look at our webpage, let us know, and we'll perhaps have a show with your point of view, but we will answer the questions because we're here to express our views, but also to value yours and to hopefully give you a chance to be part of the program with whatever point of view that you had. So we look forward to a civil discussion.
Well said. Thank you so much, my friend, for the report. All right.
That was good.
Yeah, it's time for my rant. Don't worry, I got the music. I got it settled. Now, I like the movie theater experience. I enjoy turning off my brain and get swept away to imagination land where superpowered humans save the world, detectives solve incredible puzzles, and mythology comes to life. But I never come out of a theater thinking that Tony Stark will fly over as Iron Man suit or Sherlock Holmes has delayed World War I. So why do Christians insist on feeding us their mythology through Hollywood and the silver screen? In case you haven't noticed, there's been a resurgence of Christian-themed movies lately. Anything from God is Not Dead 1 and 2, Noah, Exodus, Risen, and now this week, Miracles from Heaven. There certainly is a long and actually pretty lame history of Christian movies designed to sell their Jewish carpenter stories and questionable morals, which has given us such prize actors as Kevin Sorbo or even better, Kirk Cameron. But unlike most Hollywood stories, the Christians are trying to make you believe that this is all real. And this recent volley of films only means one thing: they're desperate. It's well known by now that churches are not just losing, but hemorrhaging members. They know their days are numbered, and like a wounded animal, they are on the offensive and more dangerous than ever. That's why they are trying so hard to influence the political process and now the public's mind with flashy features on the big screen. So I ask you, don't reward these peddlers of fear and untruth with your hard-earned dollars. Just like when you shop, you vote with your money. So when you buy a ticket to a Christian production, you essentially say, I approve of your club. The same establishment that hides predators from the law, the gang that supported despotic regimes, stopped the advancement of science, and the same group that still persecutes gays, women, and children today. If you were a member of any other group who were guilty of such misogyny, bigotry, and barbarism, you would have resigned in protest a long time ago. So don't feed the propaganda machine. It's too high a price we pay collectively each year to put up with Bronze Age delusions. Whoops. All right.
That was a well-timed ding.
It was. Bell was in the way. Yeah, of course, if you want to, by all means.
Would like to take Noah off of that list. I believe that was a movie made by an ape. Did you see the movie?
No, I did not, but I do remember reading about it.
Definitely not a Christian movie. My biggest problem with it was that they had some strange Pokemon version of evolution in the movie, and Noah was kind of a crazy child killer.
Those stone giants were awesome.
No, yeah, but it's still going out there. People are pretending that at least Noah was a real figure, and we know it wasn't the case.
I think there was another one, the Son of God. It was actually in the movie theaters. I didn't see
that one too.
See that one,
I couldn't list all of them because there's been a lot of them lately.
Yeah.
So anyway, that takes us to the end of our show. Thank you so much for listening, guys. Thank you for being here. You can follow us on leftatthevalley.com. You can send us an email at leftatvalley@outlook or leftatthevalley@gmail.com. Coming up, we got what do we got going on? you got the schedule.
Well, again, you check the web page. The next schedule will be up, I think.
Skeptical Look at Easter. That's what we got.
Skeptical Look at Easter is the next one. That's next Sunday. So get on your bunny ears, bring your chocolate, because we'll be chowing down and kind of throwing out the boobo.
The best part of Easter. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.
Is there riches? Is there glory?